Brian Fabiano, Monroe Township. So Dr. Chanley said, I want to paraphrase and correct me if I'm wrong. I was out sick. My principal made a decision to spend money without board approval. So when I came back, then I went to the board to get it approved, but then I said, we're not going to do that anymore because I don't think it's right. I think that's what I heard.
No, not at all.
I think that's what I heard because at the end of the day, the law says that expenditures are supposed to be approved by the board. And this board, and you, when you were superintendent, sat here in previous years and said that everything would come to the board. I sat in the audience in the other building, right? Everything would come to the board with the exception of emergencies or things like keeping the lights on, et cetera, right? And the board would approve them. So something smells really funny there. And you followed up by saying, we're not going to do it anymore. When you do something and say, we're not going to do it anymore, it's like an admission of guilt. The other thing I want to address is Ms. Bora's hypocrisy. She sat here and she said, well, I'm going to vote on this tonight, but I think we should have waited longer because we're not really in a rush and, you know, we don't know what we're going to need with the money and we may need more money. And about 2 years ago, a year or 2 years ago, we're in another other building, she sat and casted a vote yes to, and I'm a taxpayer, so I can talk about this. Everything you guys spend is my dollar because it comes to us as taxpayers. She casted a vote to extend the superintendent's contract, Dr. Chanley, 18 months early before it even expired. So she sits here tonight and says, well, we don't have to rush because we have time. But she, at that time, when she was voting on a contract that was millions of dollars for the taxpayers to foot, there was a rush. So you can't sit here and say, we're going to rush when we want to rush, and we're not going to rush when we don't want to rush. I mean, that is hypocrisy at its finest. Sorry, I have to call it out. I'll call it out for anybody that sits here. You said your term also was only extended by 3 months. No, it was extended by 5 months when the previous board president, Mrs. Skirby, who was the first board president in more than a decade that ever went out to a budget question because she ran the school district and ran our surplus into the ground. So let's just be clear with that. It was 5 months and it's because essentially we were out of money. The school board here, and what I'd like to hear and what I haven't heard from administration yet is not only how you're going to balance the budget, and it sounds like you're on your way to not have to go out to another question, but how are you going to start funding the surplus that we had prior to Ms. Skirby coming to the board and running it into the ground? I think it was about $10 million at that point. The last thing I'll address is, for anybody here, especially sour grapes, the last board president that lost in the last election just seems to not be able to get over it. To accuse a police officer who was almost 30 years in this town, a police officer, almost 10 years as a security director in this school district, to put putting our kids at jeopardy, you are a moron. I can't say it any other way. There is no other way to describe it. When a man works in this town, goes out on crimes, you don't know what you're getting. I come from a family of law enforcement. You don't know what you're getting when that call comes in. And when I saw Mr. Pirro as a director of security here, the kids loved him. The parents came up to him. The teachers came up to him. How many people asked for him to be on this board? The last question I'll ask is this. How many board ethics complaints or affidavits has Mr. Skirby signed against this board costing us taxpayers
Madam President,
money?
respectfully, his time is over.
She didn't cut the last person off. Oh, let me finish my question.
Because you were...
Let me finish my question. How many ethics complaints or affidavits has
Madam
Ms.
President,
Skirby signed
respectfully,
since she's been off
he
the
is
board?
insulting
Waste
people
of
on extra
taxpayer
time.
money. Thank you.